Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment. I'm Harold Fisher. We are taking a very close look at immigration and customs enforcement, better known as ICE, and the role it plays in enforcing federal immigration law. As the Trump administration ramps up its crackdown on undocumented immigrants, more communities are coming face to face with ICE agents, and some are pushing back. So what exactly does ICE do, and how is an ICE agent's authority different from that of a local police officer? Well, tonight we're joined by experts who will break down the law, the limits of enforcement, and what it all means for communities across the country. My guests are Dr. Niambi Carter, professor at the University of Maryland's School of Public Policy and author of the book American While Black, African Americans, Immigration, and the Limits of Citizenship, and Ron Hampton, retired MPD officer and former head of the National Black Police Association. Thank you both for joining the conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Harold, for having us.
Thank you.
I need to talk, first of all, about really at the most basic level, what is ICE's mission and how has that mission changed under the current administration? Niambi, can you chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, ICE is a fairly new agency, right? It's coming out of the Department of Homeland Security after September 11th. So it was thought to be a sort of innovation over our previous immigration enforcement arm. And so ICE sort of polices everything inside the country, while Customs and Border Patrol police everything on the borders of our country, right? Things coming in and out. And so under this new administration, ICE, I think, has seen a great expansion of their power. We've not typically seen ICE go into local communities. Rather, we really saw ICE trying to go after sort of higher level assets, if you will, folks who might be deemed terrorists, folks who might be sympathizing with cartels or criminal organizations. We really didn't see ICE going after sort of everyday people in the way we have. But their job does include enforcement for those people who are undocumented. But the sort of day-to-day ways that we see ICE operating now is a fairly new sort of twist on their operations.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember in the early years of ICE that usually they were working in partnership with the DEA. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when you saw huge publicized drug seizures, that ICE agents, DEA, it's that whole alphabet soup. When they were raiding a house, or even if they were at a port, it was DEA, FBI, ICE.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, because part of what ICE did then, right? I think what you're talking about, I mean, it started to evolve a little bit under the Obama administration, to be fair. But part of what ICE was doing was using kind of the intelligence, right, of those agencies to then decide to look through and see who was in the country legally or not, right? And that's sort of where they came in. Again, the change under Obama with the secure communities, where you had sort of this hybrid between local police and these federal agents sort of coming together, where people might get detained and then be held for ICE if they were found to be in the country without documentation, started under Obama. But again, it wasn't the same where you have these people going into local communities and just sort of doing these sort of flash raids, if you will, trying to determine who is a documented person, who is an undocumented person.
Mm-hmm. Ron, let me ask you, honestly, as many times as I've had you on this program, I never asked you when you retired.
I retired, the exact day I retired was August the 29th, 1994.
in
I
'94.
I wasn't even in Washington D.C. or at the police department. I was in L.A. I was in Los Angeles, California. But
Well,
you could you
really
you
brings
could
me to the question.
say that again.
Which brings me to my next question,
Yes, sir.
because that was pre-ICE,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly there were operations that dealt with um, those who were, illegal immigrants, or and people who were violently, and I
Right.
emphasize violently, breaking the law, who were not citizens. As a police officer, wherever you were, what interaction did you have when you were still working with federal agents, and how does that compare to what you're seeing now?
You know what? I was on almost 24 years, and in the 24 years that I served in the Metropolitan Police Department, signed to the third district, and worked in a variety of ways, I never ever worked with any federal officers at all.
Mhm.
ICE, DA, never did I work with any of them. I heard of task forces that were going on during the time that I was there, but I didn't. I never worked with any of them. However, I remember because in my capacity at the National Black Police Association, I remember when the feds were pushing the so-called 287 program, where they asked police departments to sign on to provide information and also cooperation with the immigration authorities when they were going out looking for folk and all of that. And of course, being the kind of person that I've been all along, I did my homework. I looked it up. I read. I followed the information in reference to this whole idea. And a lot of police departments in the country, a lot of municipal police departments and sheriff departments in the country, and particularly those around the border, they refused to sign up on the 287 program to work with ICE around the cooperating with ICE when they were doing that work in our community, because it had an inherent negative impact on policing. Here we were talking about community policing in my day, and working with the community being involved. And our community was very diverse. Let's be real. Hispanics made up a significant number of the folk in our community, and that's who this whole effort was around. So we didn't sign up. And I remember our organization under my leadership pushed back on the whole idea of signing these 287 agreements to work with ICE to do the work that they was doing, because of the negative impact that it was going to have on policing. And my understanding of this whole thing, and it caused me to really do some homework on it, that immigration in this country was an administrative function. It wasn't a criminal function. And even when one violated the process, it was still an administrative function. That's why the warrants that they have aren't criminal or judicial warrants. They are administrative warrants. And it's very limited in terms of what they can do under that administrative warrant when they go in. You can't be going into people's private homes and all that kind of stuff. You can push away on that kind of stuff, not push them, but you can push back on the whole process. You don't have to agree or go along with it. And so to see what we're seeing now is almost like an army. They're behaving like armed forces, and that's how these people are using it. Can you imagine that the president of the United States would tell somebody that an ICE officer has absolute immunity when the president don't even have absolute immunity? Come on, let's be real.
So let me ask you this, Ron.
Have absolute immunity.
Ron, let me ask you this before I go back to Dr. Carter. From your perspective and your expertise, what is the difference between the authority that an ICE agent has compared to that of a local or state police officer?
Well, if you look in the code, a municipal police officer or sheriff or county police deputy has the authority to enforce the law and other things in the area that they live. That's different than like the federal sector. FBI, for example, if you compare a DC Metropolitan Police officer to an FBI officer, I can only do what I can do within the boundaries of the District of Columbia. If I go somewhere else, I have to go to the police department and get a police officer from that jurisdiction to go do something that I need to do in that jurisdiction. But the feds don't have to do that. The FBI doesn't have to do that. Now, but the FBI is a criminal organization. It enforces criminal law. It's DEA, the same thing. So it's not like the border. The border enforces administrative law, administrative rules, and those things related to immigration, which violating immigration up to this point has not been a criminal offense. A criminal offense. Now, what they're doing is, in my opinion, they're making it a criminal offense without the law to back them up.
Yeah.
And that's why people are upset about it. And it doesn't seem that they are also invested in the kind of training and education that a real police officer goes through. They don't get that. So this is very different. And then municipal policing is very different than what the feds do. FBI agents don't answer calls for service. They don't work or walk foot beats. They don't work in communities and do those kinds of things. So they operate at a very different level and an understanding of what it is that we talk about when we talk about. It's not public safety. It really isn't.
Yeah. Dr. Carter, one of the more concerning things that we have seen recently, when I say recently, I'm talking about over the past month or so, is what has commonly been known in our community as, racial profiling. It is one thing for you to be in the 7-Eleven down the street and the police come and say, you look like a woman who robbed the 7-Eleven somewhere else 2 hours ago. But now we are seeing reports of ICE agents coming up to people and asking, are you a citizen? And let's just take, you for a moment. You are a fairer skinned Black woman. Why? Because I'm culturally educated, but for someone who is not culturally educated, I don't know whether or not you're from Glen Arden, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, or Toronto.
But I think what Mr. Hampton said is really key here. You're talking about criminalizing something that is not criminal. We've never understood being undocumented to be something that should lead one to prison, although that is how we have kept undocumented people. When we detain them, we treat them like criminals. We put them in jails, we put them in prisons. But you're right in the sense that the Supreme Court has basically said racial profiling for the purposes of immigration enforcement is okay, right? They said that you can use someone's accent, you can use someone's appearance, all of those things that previously we said were not probable cause, that those things are now in play. More importantly, and I think everybody should hear this, whether you were born in this country or born somewhere else, most of us have nothing on our person on any given day that proves our status as citizens. It is not your social security card. It is not your driver's license. None of that proves you're a citizen unless you have like your birth certificate and something else to prove you were here, or a passport or a passport card. Those are the only documents that can prove your status. And what we are seeing that ICE is doing is taking people to detention until they can sort it out. But not even doing that. They are deporting people before it gets sorted out. So there are people who are here who are not citizens, but are here legally, right? They have permanent residency or some sort of legal status that allows them to be in the United States. We have seen citizens find themselves be removed, and the stakes are really high.
That's
not
right.
just for the people who have to prove their citizenship, but for those of us who get caught up in that, right? I mean, we have people who have found themselves. I mean, we saw the folks in Chicago, right? There were many Black people who were found themselves on those curbs with nothing to prove their identities, right? Your English accent will not save you, right? Your being living here. I mean, I have students who are DACA recipients who are uncertain, right? Even though they're here legally, whether they are going to be caught up in this mess because they are not citizens, even though they have a status that allows them to be here. So I would say for any of us who are concerned with this, we can't even rest safely, because one of the things that Mr. Hampton was raising is DC has been a sanctuary since the Marion Barry days. He doesn't get
Hold
enough.
that point. Hold that point. Don't forget. Don't forget what you were going to say, because we're going to continue this on the other side. We want to remind you that you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR-FM. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We are continuing our conversation about what is and what isn't the role of ICE, immigration, and custom enforcement agents. My guests are Dr. Niambi Carter, professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Policy and author of the book American Wild Black: African Americans, Immigration, and the Limits of Citizenship. Also, Ron Hampton, retired MPD officer and former head of the National Black Police Association. Dr. Carter, continue your point. You were talking about DC being a sanctuary city since the Marion Barry era.
Absolutely. And so that basically meant you could sort of have a little freedom. You could breathe a little easier, because those would not be questions about your citizenship that would be asked if you were pulled over for, a busted tail light, or if, someone was giving you some kind of ticket. Same thing in parts of Maryland, right? PG County is a sanctuary county. There are some places like Tacoma Park, which is a sanctuary city, right? All of these places. But now, because of this federal law enforcement and this sort of very aggressive nature of federal law enforcement, which this administration seems to believe usurps all the sovereignty of the states and localities and their law enforcement priorities, that means that people cannot be comfortable with that. And so having no ability most of the time to prove who you are, because again, some jurisdictions allow you to have a driver's license even if you're not a documented citizen. That is not going to be something we can rest on. So all of us should be on high alert that many of us may experience the discomfort and the dangers of being detained by ICE. And they are not local law enforcement. I think that needs to be made very clear.
I mean, to your point, when you talk about the concerns of U.S. citizens, for example, if you are from Puerto Rico, you are a U.S. citizen.
Absolutely.
If you are from the U.S. Virgin Islands, you are a U.S. citizen. If you are from the territory of Guam, for example, but it is likely that if you were born in any of those three places, that you do have an accent.
Mm-hmm. Even if people hear you speaking Spanish, right? I live in a very heavily Latino neighborhood. If they hear you speaking Spanish or another language, they can use that as a reason to ask you about your status, and not just ask you, force you to produce some sort of documentation to prove your status, even though you're having a private conversation that is not criminal. You've not done any illegal. There's no provocation other than you being a person that they decide doesn't look American or doesn't sound American.
Dr. Carter, can I intervene in a second? Dr. Carter, what was in this rather rhetorical, what was the court thinking about when it even allowed that? For the simple reason is that we have an awful lot of legitimate U.S. citizens who have accents. And if you're able to go by a person having an accent to judge whether or not they should be here or you ought to detain them, is absolutely, it violates the Fourth Amendment. I mean, this is crazy. I almost fainted when I heard that. I mean, it was just overwhelming for And I mean, it wasn't a majority decision, but it's just crazy that we're living in those times. And look, that was the reason, the purpose of the 287, because when the officers came to a particular location, they needed the police to go with them to be able to do their job, because they could not do their job. The immigration officers just couldn't just walk in somebody's house and grab them and walk away with them. That hasn't changed. The law hasn't changed in that regard. But that, I mean, that's just crazy and unheard of. And that's one of the reasons why we became a sanctuary city, as well as a lot of other locations, because they had to ask permission in order to go into the city to do the job that they was expected to do. And they wasn't doing it proper. And these people here have now exaggerated it and expanded on it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had a better answer. I can't divine what the Supreme Court justices were thinking. I didn't read the opinion in detail, but I can tell you it circumvents their reasonable suspicion standard, which has largely been the standard that has been used. You have to have a reasonable suspicion to pull someone over, to detain someone, right? And they said that's out the window, because I think they are more concerned with the priorities of this administration than the actual administration of the law and the Constitution, upholding that for citizens and non-citizens alike. And thank you for noting that there are many citizens who are from places where they may have access. We don't think about those people often, but there are many people who are Americans who may have accents, who may sound different, who look different. And yet the Supreme Court said that fact that you are different, and by different, they mean non-white. Let's be very clear.
Right. Yeah, that's what they were talking about.
Scandinavians, right?
Yeah, but I was thinking, I mean, you know, Dr. Carter, I mean, if you speak Danish and you're from Greenland, then that's another conversation.
They're not coming for you.
Right. So,
right. Yeah, they were. You can have a British accent, and then they didn't talk about a British accent.
But no, our president said those are the kind of people you want in America. He's been very clear about who he considers to be citizens or worthy of citizenship. And again, I think our country has been for a long time. I mean, I think our immigration system has been broken, has been racist, has been exclusionary. But to see all of this law enforcement sort of capitulating to the nationalism and the nativism that is embedded in this administration, I do think is not something we expected to see in this moment. We've seen it before.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Ron, and I think this is one of the other concerning issues, and I think this goes back to training the new ICE agents, and it has been reported that their 6 months training has been cut to 47 days, a nod of deference to the president. But more broadly, I want to ask you first. You've seen the video in the shooting of Renee Good, and I'm not even going to preface it with anything other than, in your opinion, as a retired police officer, what went wrong in that incident?
Whew, man, you know what? To me, the woman did nothing wrong. Not to warrant pulling your weapon and discharging your weapon, not just once, but 3 times. There was nothing that warranted that, and it's just totally absurd that. And I happened to see this by accident, because I really don't try to do this. But I happened upon the Vice President of the United States standing up there justifying what is happening. And he hadn't had a second of law enforcement training, but then he's standing up there justifying what that officer did. It's totally absurd. They didn't. Look, when I went through this training in 1970, it was either 1970 or 71, and they didn't they actually instructed us about standing in front of cars or standing in the way of danger, regardless of whether it was a car or any other danger. You know, I don't want to digress, but there was a thing where they taught us about look in before you go in, and what they was talking about when you go in a business, and you could just walk in the building of a business or a bank and find yourself in the middle of a holdup if you didn't look in. So you look in before you go in. The same thing applies to when you make traffic stops. Traffic stops are one of the most dangerous things that an individual police officer can find him or herself involved in. And the fact of the matter is you don't put yourself in danger. And we stopped shooting in the early 80s. We stopped shooting at moving vehicles. And the reason for that is that rounds will bounce off of cars and go somewhere else. It's just totally absurd that they would make somehow or another this all right, because it isn't all right, and you can see that it isn't all right. And it's just these guys, the training part of it, it's nowhere in the world. If I go through 6 months of training, some state police departments spend 8 months to 10 months in training, so long that they actually stay on the premise, where municipal policing, generally you go to the academy and then you go back home at the end of the day. But to reduce 6 months of training down to 47 days, I would be afraid to even be in the area where those officers are when they're carrying guns, because they generally don't use them right.
Well, let me
that's the most dangerous thing. And look, let me just say, let me finish with this here.
Okay.
In the 24 years that I've been up, do you know I never discharged my weapon? And the statistics and the research show that the average person who joined the police department, retired from the police department, never ever using his or her weapon in defense of their life or someone else's life. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have to do that. And I mean, that's not something that we get involved in. It was no reason to call to do that. No, it didn't want that.
The thing that struck me about the video, there were two things. And I mean, I'm not a police officer. I've not been to any public citizen police officer training, you know, where they had the citizens come in. But I have had, handgun training. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I remember very clearly from handgun training, and this isn't about policing, this is about the proper handling of a handgun, is that, you know, you need to make sure that that gun is pointed in a place. What, you know, once you pull it out, that you intend to fire. Mm-hmm. But short of that, there were 4 people. There was the woman who was shot, her wife, but there were also 2 other officers who were in the line of fire. That is the thing that struck me, because even if he didn't hit the woman who was in the car, he could have hit the other officers. And the other thing, Ron, that I found particularly striking was the other officers did not pull out their firearms.
Ain't that something?
And that was the thing that, because when the very first time I saw the video, these officers, even though they could not get in the car, the door was locked, and the one who had his hand on the handle but couldn't open the door, neither one of them pulled out their firearms. And then when the officer did pull out his firearms, the first thing I said to myself was, why did he pull out his firearm?
Right. That's right. That's right. You don't have to have been exposed to or been through training to realize those kind of things. I'm talking about as a police officer, like you said. But the other thing that I thought about the same thing myself when I saw the film, and see, that said something about the individual, but it also said something about how it was perceived by the rest of them in relationship to whether it was dangerous to them. And they didn't pull their gun. That's
Right.
exactly.
I mean,
He didn't put
their
it.
demeanor was completely different.
That's right. So,
And
did
certainly we
you
can
see?
leave it up to the experts to make the determination. But I
Did you see? Did you see how he when the car pulled to the right, the officer stepped backwards. He didn't step to it. He
yeah,
stepped back.
he got out of the way.
Out of
So
the-
That's
yeah, and
exactly.
so
That's right.
I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I think it was important for us to to talk about
Mhm.
because again, you know this shooting, and then of course there have been other shootings. The next day there was a shooting in Portland.
Portland. That's right.
Dr. Carter.
Mhm.
So more broadly, this is bringing up concerns about what impact these ICE officers are having on the broader community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to like I said, not to belabor the point, there were so many ways they could, if they had to apprehend her, they had her tag number. She was in her neighborhood. She was at her house. Her wife was there. Her child, she was coming home. You could have got her later. But
Right.
it was so dangerous because there were so many neighbors outside. This is the peak of the workday. He could have shot anybody. Those bullets don't stop just because they hit somebody.
Including the person who took the video.
Exactly. Anybody could have been hurt that day. So I think the gravity of that needs to sit with us. But I think also, like you said, this training part, not that training is a panacea, but hairdressers, barbers, CNAs have to get more training than ICE agents. And they
And that's
don't wield anything but scissors and clippers. Right. And this is not to suggest that they can't do harm. Right. Chemical burns are real. You can really hurt somebody. But
right.
when you're talking about the fact that these people are armed with tasers, guns, pepper spray, all kinds of things that can really maim and kill people, and we are giving them less training than we would give a phlebotomist. That should make all of our blood boil. And I think what they're doing here is trying to habituate us and get us used to this amount of force being used against regular citizens. What it angers me more than anything, and it should anger police, and this should make local police more concerned. The fact that they can wear jackets, right, flak jackets and things that say police on them, they are not the police. They are
That's right.
federal law enforcement agents, but they put this on and they wear those shiesty masks that we say kids can't wear in stores, right, because of fear. And this is making everybody's life and job more dangerous, local law enforcement and regular citizens. But I think they are trying to see how far they can push this ball up a hill before citizens actually revolt, before citizens actually push back, because this saying that this man had the right to shoot this woman in the face at 8:30 in the morning, whatever time it was during rush hour, to say that these agents can come to your home and walk around your home and be on your private property and in your yard. Local police can't do that. Federal agents can't either, but they do it. They are trying to get us used to and afraid of the use of force, so we will comply with things that are patently illegal and unconstitutional.
So I want to step back to something that you mentioned, Dr. Carter, about the face covering. Unless, and this much I do know, unless an officer is perhaps undercover, and his face may not necessarily be covered. You just don't know who he is in the performance of an undercover duty.
Right.
But I've seen, prior to all of this, we've seen officers who are making traffic stops whose faces are covered when it's 15 degrees outside. Okay, when it's cold, yes, we understand that. But certainly there are exceptions. But generally speaking, a municipal police officer, state police officer, you don't have any difficulty identifying them,
Right.
whether it be badge number, you know what they look like. They may have a hat on, so you don't know whether they're bald or they have hair. But beyond that, identifying the officer is not a problem. But this is really, really different, where you just don't know who is approaching
Yeah,
And I think about that too. Those officers have a responsibility to identify themselves. When you get
that's right.
pulled over, any of us have gotten pulled over. They say, Miss Carter, or I'm Officer so and so. I'm pulling you over because of this. I'm a state trooper so and so. I'm pulling you over for that. These people don't identify themselves. They don't tell you why they're coming to you. They don't tell you why they're speaking to you. They just say you're detained. It's like, wait a minute, I'm detained for what? And then you want to put your hands on me? I don't know who you are. We live in a crazy world. How many people couldn't? Because some of these guys are just wearing street clothes. Who couldn't just put on a jacket that says police and put on a face mask? And now that some places are open, many places are open carry, walk around with a gun on their hip and be kidnapping people. Like,
That's
I
right.
would be a crazy person to allow some strange person with no identification just put me in an unmarked vehicle and take me off to God knows where. That should not happen. Part of the
Right.
reason why officers have badge numbers, have to identify themselves, give you a name, tell you where they're from, right? Is so you can identify and verify. We can't do any of that with ICE agents. And that is on purpose. They say it's to protect the officer's safety. No, it's not. It doesn't make us safe. It doesn't make those officers safe. Somebody try to pull me over in the middle of the night, I'm booking it because I don't know who this person is trying to block me in. Are they trying to rob me? Are they trying to carjack me? Are they trying to kill me, abduct me? I don't know. But yet you're telling me that I should just comply. And if I don't, this person has the right to kill me.
Yeah. And Ron, one of the other things that we have seen in a lot of social media videos is that citizens who are informed have been asking these ICE agents whether or not they have warrants. And there seems to really be a headbutting between, generally citizens know you can't arrest me without a warrant, or try to arrest someone who may be working at my home
Mm-hmm.
without a warrant. But these ICE agents do not have warrants. They're just, again, as Dr. Carter was saying, they're just coming up and grabbing people. Should they have warrants?
Oh, they need to have a judiciary warrant, not an administrative warrant, but a judiciary warrant that's signed by a judge, and it names the person. It talks about what it is that they are accused of and everything. So that's very different. Administrative warrant isn't laid out in that fashion, and you need to question that. It's really crazy, and most of the time, again, and I mean, there's a reason for that. Is because that those immigration violations are administrative violations, not judicial, not criminal violations. That process is not criminal, and that's why it is the way it's set up. But we need to answer those questions. We need to ask. We need to educate ourselves about the process and what it is they're doing and who they're doing, and they need to. We need to push back on this mask thing. It's crazy, No police officer wears. I never wore a mask, and look, I've worked for people who said they didn't even want you to wear gloves because gloves gave off a certain kind of image when you was handling and talking to people, and you standing there with gloves on. You don't have to wear no gloves and all those kinds of things. So, that those were things that we have moved away from in municipal policing because we are doing the job that is with the citizens of the cities and states that we live in, and so we don't need to do that. But this raises this behavior on the part of ICE raises some serious questions about the kind of things that are going on in this country right now, and what it is that we're going to put up with as it relates to citizens. I want to be clear. I'm not going. I'm just not going, because I'm going to do. I've seen a couple of videos from officers in New York, for example, and in other places, where they're telling ICE individuals that you can't do that here. And I'm a police officer here. I'm a duly sworn police officer here in New York City, and you can't do that. That's illegal. You can't do that. And those are the kind of things that we need to do. As police officers, but also as people. We ought not be just rolling over for these clowns, because what they're doing is illegal.
Dr. Carter, short of carrying a passport, if you have one, how might people who are concerned about racial profiling protect themselves?
I mean, look, I think this is the hard part, right? Because the truth is, I understand why some people say, I will not capitulate. I will not carry my passport because this is illegal and I'm not going to comply, which means you might find yourself detained for a very long time and you need to be okay with that idea. Like that's just a plain truth. But I do think knowledge is the key to some of this. So you do have to have a judicial warrant, as Mr. Hampton have already told the guests. You have to have a signed judicial warrant. It will have your name on it. It's not going to be a blank piece of paper. It's not going to just be some blanket thing. The other thing is you don't have to answer any questions to anyone. You have the right to remain silent. The best thing you can do is don't say anything to any of them. The other thing is if they come to your house, you do not have to open your door. Don't open your door for them. Don't answer questions about people who might live there. If they say, is so-and-so here? You don't have to do their job for them. Don't answer any questions. Don't open your door. You don't have to sign anything. That's another really important thing. Do not sign any piece of paper those people give you, right? And if, a person is asking you to stay there, ask, are you free to leave? Am I being detained? Am I being arrested? Am I free to leave? And if they say yes, go on about your business. But you do not have to give these people anything. And I will tell people, silence is golden. Say nothing. Answer no questions. Don't do their jobs. Don't inform on your neighbors. If they're looking across the street and they come over to your house, absolutely not. Do not do their jobs for them. But outside of that, I mean, I would say make sure your location is on. If you got a phone and you got somebody you trust and you love, put your location on. It may not be a full safety measure, but make sure people know where you are and where you expect it to go, because these people are snatching people off the street and you don't necessarily have the right to that phone call. Like we've seen in all the procedural dramas for the last 30 years, you don't have the right to that phone call. You have no way of knowing when you'll see a judge, if you'll see a judge. Part of the reason why they've expedited these deportations is to prevent people from seeing judges. And we've seen already what they did with Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia, and some others. Once you're gone, they're like, we can't get you back. I don't know what we're gonna do about you. So the only thing I can say, don't answer the door. If there's no judicial warrant, they cannot come for you or to you. If you're being detained, ask if you're free to leave. If you're free to leave, leave. Don't say anything and don't sign anything.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this conversation for now, because certainly we will be talking about this again. Ron Hampton, Dr. Niambi Carter, always a pleasure to have both of you on the program. I appreciate it. Stay safe out there in those streets. I appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Monday, January 12th, 2026. I'm Harold Fisher.